Hi, my name is Phyllis Strickland,
And my name is Juan Strickland.
and we're going to talk to you today a little bit about mental health and mental illness. And the reason we're telling this story is not because we're physicians, psychiatrists, therapists, or anything like that, psychologists, but we're actually family members of someone who has a mental illness. And because of that, we've had to learn a lot about how to navigate and help and advocate for our loved one. Juan will tell you a little bit about that.
Well, our story begins with our son. And, you know, in his freshman year in college, we noticed some significant changes in his study habits, his behavior. Even prior to going off to his freshman year to college, that summer we noticed some behaviors that were concerning. For example, I had tickets for the Los Angeles Lakers opening night when it was back-to-back, Phil, Kobe, and Shaq. And my son had left me a note on the kitchen counter that evening. And I came home, I read the note. He indicated in the note that he was feeling paranoid and couldn't go to the game with me. And that was earth-shattering, that was troubling, concerning. And I'm starting to think, is he using drugs or alcohol? Is there a substance abuse problem? And sure enough, that was what was going on in his life. That was part of it. But to me, I initially thought it was strictly, irresponsible choices, poor behavior. He mentioned one night also that he was covering the windows in his bedroom with sheets because he felt like someone was shooting at the house. Again, that was extremely outside the box in terms of what we thought was happening with him, but we're thinking it's all being driven by substance abuse.
And that's what you will often see with your family members. You'll see these changes in behavior that you might try to attribute to something else. And in fact, you should pay attention to them. Examples might be decline in their functioning, poor choices, aggressive behavior, or irritability. And it's best to get those things checked out by a physician and not ignore them to make sure that something isn't physically going on. And that leads to another point, that mental illness is similar to physical illnesses. It's actually the brain is not functioning properly, and it displays itself in behaviors that are dysfunctional, for lack of a better word. But I'd like to read this definition. Mental illness impacts the lives of at least 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 10 children, or 60 million Americans. So it's highly probable that there's someone in your family that has mental illness. Number 2, family members can learn about brain disorders and how they can support and advocate for their loved ones. And one thing is to be able to go get that person checked out so those diagnoses can be made. And then Juan already have spoken to the group about NAMI. It's a National Alliance of Mental Illness, and they have free programs they offer to train family members about mental illness.
Also, I want to mention that initially we thought, let's try the tough love route with our son. So that's what we did. We did a family intervention involving his cousins, my aunt, myself, my wife Phyllis, and we laid down an ultimatum about substance abuse, and or you would have to be put out the house. And sure enough, he rejected the intervention that night. He was put out the house that night. He was on the street for 9 weeks, living with a friend we didn't know where. But it was so troubling to us that every morning my wife and I cried. We went walking together for 9 weeks. Every morning we cried, thinking what was going to happen next. Would he be harmed or attacked? And after about 9 weeks, he called us from a gas station and asked us to pick him up, said he was ready to get help. And I will say that when I did see him that day, I looked into his eyes. I saw nothing but death. Something had changed. He had maybe had a psychiatric break of some type. We still had no clue that it was a change in his brain chemistry. But whatever was happening to him was happening in the prime of his life. It had never shown up in elementary school, junior high, high school. And so we were still searching for what was really happening. We actually put him into a couple of private substance abuse residential treatment programs that focus on alcohol addiction and substance abuse addiction, not knowing that there was something beyond that. He was self-medicating, but we didn't know why.
And let me pick it up there. Again, that's the importance of getting good diagnosis. You probably heard diagnoses like bipolar disorder or major depression or schizophrenia, the anxiety disorders, the phobias. It's very important that you get the proper diagnosis so you can get the proper treatment. The example Juan gave was that we sought after addiction treatment, but that was only half of the problem. That's not going to treat the mental illness. So it's very important to get the differential diagnosis.
There's another component here I want to mention when it comes to mental illness in your loved one, that there are certain things that are added to them against their will, and there's certain things that are taken away from them against their will. So let me give you an example of things that were added to my son, behaviors that we never saw before that were added to him. Tension and nervousness, irritability and criticalness, unpredictable overreaction to things, indifference, lack of hygiene. He gave up on his hygiene. Forgetfulness. He had uncontrollable sadness sometimes, rudeness and hostility. These are things that have been added to his persona because of mental illness. Indecisiveness, withdrawn and being isolative. Also, things that were taken away from him against his will. Imagine if these things were taken away from you against your will. Ability to focus and concentrate, insight about what is happening, recognition of your own hygiene or lack thereof, capacity for intimacy, enjoyment of family, friends, and work, ability to exercise control. Imagine if optimism and faith were taken away from you, hope about the future, ability to appreciate people and accept their help, pride in taking responsibility, ability to express joy. These are just some of the things that were taken from him.
What's interesting about that, think about this analogy. When we all get a common cold, there's things that are added on to us. We get the sniffles, we get headaches, we have fatigue. All those things impact about our ability to function. And we also, what's taken away from us, our ability to concentrate, our ability to perform our jobs. It's the same thing with mental illness. Symptoms are added onto you and things are taken away from you that, that create or help us to see our loved one the way we used to. Again, we want to reiterate how important it is to get the help that's necessary and keep pushing until you get the help because your loved one needs it.